What happens when a woman says no? Not to a stranger, not to a criminal, but to her own husband. What happens when a bride, still in her wedding jewelry, dares to claim control over her body? Would her family support her? Would the law protect her? Would her voice even matter? Or would she be punished for defiance with the ultimate price? This is the real-life story of Priyanka Kumari, a young woman who believed her life was her own, until one night, her refusal became a death sentence. And what happened next shook an entire nation. Priyanka was born in Hardoi, a small town in Uttar Pradesh, India. She was one of 3 daughters in a household governed by fear, shame, and unspoken rules. Her father ruled the home like a court. Her mother kept her head low, repeating one phrase like a hymn: "A girl must leave quietly." But Priyanka wasn't quiet, not inside. She wanted to be a nurse, to study, to earn, to walk through a hospital hallway with purpose, not through a wedding aisle with dread. She once whispered to a friend, "I don't want to be someone's wife. I want to be someone." But wanting isn't enough, not in a place where women are raised for marriage, and silence is mistaken for virtue. Priyanka was 22 when her parents arranged her marriage to Chandrakant, a 25-year-old man from the same village, a man she barely knew, a man who never asked her what she loved or what she feared. He had never spoken directly to Priyanka before the wedding. On the surface, he appeared stable, respectable, a factory worker who kept to himself. His family had a strong presence in the community. They were strict, religious, the kind who believed discipline was an act of love. On their wedding day, the drums drowned her heartbeat. The henna on her hands wasn't dry when she was told, "He is your God now." And like that, her dreams were caged. Chandrakant wasn't violent at first, but he was cold, possessive, distant. To him, Priyanka was a wife, a duty, a body to claim. And when she hesitated, when she said no, his patience cracked. But how does love become rage? How does a wedding night end with blood? We'll take you behind the closed doors of a marriage built on fear, and the moment that turned refusal into rage. If you believe stories like Priyanka's deserve to be heard, if you want to help us shed light on these hidden crimes, subscribe to this channel. Like the video, share it, and tap the notification bell, because silence protects the guilty, but storytelling protects the truth. In the days following their wedding, Priyanka tried to adjust, tried to find her place in a house that wasn't hers, with a man she barely knew. But how do you adjust to being owned? Chandrakant began to change. The man who had been silent before marriage became something else, demanding, entitled, cold. He watched her every move, questioned every phone call. He didn't like her speaking to her sisters. He didn't like her keeping her door closed. He especially didn't like being told no. And on their 3rd night together, when Priyanka resisted his touch again, he slapped her. It wasn't just the pain. It was the message behind it. You don't get to choose. Priyanka didn't scream. She didn't run. Where would she go? In her world, a woman leaving her husband wasn't brave. It was shameful. Her own mother, when Priyanka once tried to speak of Chandrakant's behavior, only said, "All women go through this. You are his wife. Obey." And so she stayed. But the violence didn't. Days turned into weeks, and each week, another piece of Priyanka disappeared. She stopped calling her friends. She stopped smiling. Her neighbors later recalled how they saw her standing on the balcony some nights, staring at the sky, as if hoping someone, somewhere, might hear what she couldn't say aloud. And then came the turning point. One night, Priyanka refused him again. But this time, she said more than no. She looked him in the eye and said something he couldn't bear to hear. "You don't own me." For men like Chandrakant, raised on control, shaped by fragile pride, those 4 words were a threat, an insult, a rebellion. He didn't speak. He just left the room. But hours later, when Priyanka had finally drifted into sleep, he returned, with something in his hand. What happened next is something no human being should ever witness. A crime so brutal, so intimate, it was as if hatred had taken the shape of love and swallowed it whole. That night, a woman's courage turned into a courtroom's cry. If you are still with us, this is the time to pause and reflect. How many more Priyankas will it take before we change the meaning of marriage? If this story has shaken you, let others hear what you're hearing. Share it. Let the silence break before another life does. They say monsters come out at night, but what if the monster sleeps beside you, wears a wedding ring, and calls you his wife? It was past midnight. The village was quiet, a heavy kind of quiet, like something holding its breath. In the corner room of a modest 2-story house, Priyanka lay curled up on her side. She wasn't asleep, just still. Her heart was louder than the clock. Chandrakant had stormed out hours ago. She didn't know where he went, but part of her hoped he wouldn't return that night. The silence was safer than his footsteps. She had defied him, looked him in the eye, claimed her body as her own. "You don't own me," she'd said. Those words hung in the air like smoke, lingering, stinging. And now she waited, in a room that no longer felt like a room. It felt like a waiting room at the edge of something awful. Then came the sound, the creak of the front door. Slow, deliberate, then the thud of his boots on the marble floor. Closer, closer, closer. The door opened. He didn't knock, and in his hand was a weapon. No words, no argument, no warning. He moved toward her like he wasn't human anymore, like he had turned into an animal, blind with fury, deaf to reason. He pulled her from the bed. She screamed, but no one heard her. Or maybe they did, and chose not to act. The neighbors later said they thought it was a domestic argument, something that would blow over. But rage doesn't blow over. It builds. It burns. He dragged her to the courtyard. Right there, under the same sky she had once stared into. He forced her to the ground. What did he say in that moment? Was it about power, control, revenge? Or was it silence again? The kind that hides behind tradition. Then, without hesitation, he swung the blade. Once, twice, 3 times, and Priyanka's voice, her body, was gone. But he wasn't done. He picked up her severed head and walked through the narrow streets, past sleeping homes, through alleys that echoed with the sound of his madness. He carried her head in his hands, like it was proof of victory. Witnesses said he looked calm, as if this was justice, not murder. Some tried to stop him, others froze. A few even filmed it. How does a society arrive at a point where horror becomes something you record instead of prevent? When police finally arrived, Chandrakant was still holding her, still gripping the last remnant of a woman he had turned into a symbol of shame because she dared to say no. He didn't run, he didn't cry, he confessed, as if what he had done was his right. How did her parents react? What did the law decide? How did the media react? And more importantly, did anyone ever say her name again? The trial began with silence. Not the kind that follows grief, but the kind that conceals it. Priyanka's body was laid to rest without fanfare, without a crowd. Her family kept their faces low, their words lower. The whispers around the village weren't of mourning. They were of shame. Because in their eyes, she had broken the rule. She had disobeyed. Now she was gone. Chandrakant was arrested immediately. He did not deny what he had done. In fact, he confessed openly. No hesitation. No remorse. He told the police, "She dishonored me. She insulted my rights as a husband." Those words, rights as a husband, rang louder than the sirens. In the courtroom, the atmosphere was dense. Press and activists filled the benches. Priyanka's name was on every headline, on every lip. No one from her family came to the hearings. Not her father, not her mother, not even her sisters. Was it grief, or guilt, or something worse? Maybe they believed deep down that this was meant to happen. The prosecutor built a case on intent, on cruelty, on the cold, calculated nature of the murder. They showed CCTV clips of him walking with her head. They played the 9/11 calls from neighbors. They read text messages Priyanka had once sent to a friend. Pleas for help, written in trembling words. The judge listened, unblinking. But what does justice mean? In a place where women are taught that obedience is survival, a women's rights group began attending the trial daily. They held placards with Priyanka's name, refusing to let her become another anonymous victim, another footnote. Their presence changed something. The media turned the case into a national reckoning. TV panels debated marital consent. Newspapers printed essays titled, "When Saying No Means Death." Radio hosts asked callers, "Is marriage still sacred when it's built on fear?" And yet, through all of this, her family remained silent until the 4th day of trial. Her younger sister appeared, veil drawn low, hands shaking. She didn't speak at first, just stood beside the courtroom door, watching. Then, when called to testify, she stepped forward, and in a voice that barely rose above a whisper, she said, She was scared of him. She told me the first week. I begged her to run, but she said, where would I go? If I run, I ruin everyone. Tears slipped down her face. She thought she had no right to leave. She thought her body didn't belong to her. The courtroom fell silent. A different kind of silence this time. The kind that comes when truth cuts deeper than the crime. The defense tried to argue mental instability. They claimed cultural misunderstanding, but no one bought it. Not the jury, not the crowd, not even the judge. This was not a crime of passion. It was a crime of entitlement. The judge sentenced Chandrakant to death by hanging. The crowd outside the courthouse erupted. Some called it justice. Others called it symbolic. Because what about the system that raised him? The culture that taught him a wife's body was his property. The silence that let him believe murder was discipline. No law can undo what he did. No verdict can restore Priyanka's life. But maybe, just maybe, it started something. In the weeks that followed, news outlets continued the conversation. New cases surfaced. New victims stepped forward. One girl, just 19, said Priyanka's story gave her the courage to flee her abusive marriage. Another said she finally told her parents she wouldn't marry at all. A teacher in Delhi created a lesson plan titled Bodily Rights and Autonomy. Inspired by Priyanka's case, it was adopted by over 400 schools. And somewhere, in a quiet part of Hardoi, a small mural appeared on a brick wall, painted by a group of anonymous girls. It showed a faceless woman, hair blowing in the wind, eyes closed, head held high, and beside her, painted in red, "You don't own me." What do we do with a story like Priyanka's? Do we mourn and move on? Reduce her name to a headline, a hashtag, a memory blurred by time? Or do we hold it close, carry it, and let it change us? Because stories like Priyanka's don't just happen in headlines. They happen in homes, in bedrooms, in places where no camera goes, in places where fear lives quietly. What remains after a death like hers is not just grief. It is a mirror, held up to a society that still teaches girls to shrink, held up to families who protect tradition over truth, held up to us who choose what stories to tell and what stories to forget. We often ask, why didn't she leave? But maybe we should ask, why was staying her only option? We ask, why didn't she speak louder? But maybe the better question is, why did no one listen when she whispered? We hold vigils, we pass laws, but do we change what we teach our sons? Do we shift what we expect of our daughters? In the months that followed Chandrakant's sentencing, the media moved on, the headlines faded, the outrage cooled, but not everywhere. In small circles of activists, lawyers, students, Priyanka's name became a case study, a symbol, a conversation. University panels debated marital rape laws. Social workers launched campaigns on bodily autonomy. Anonymous letters flooded women's shelters, stories of others like her. And in the village of Hardoi, something unexpected happened. A school named a girls' reading corner after her. The nameplate read, For the girl who wanted to be someone. A teacher there, an old woman with silver hair, told her students she was not a rebel. She was just a woman who knew her worth. And for that, she died. That must never happen again. The mural on the village wall stayed. Some tried to wash it off. Others repainted it again and again. Because Priyanka's story wasn't a warning. It was a revolution. Not of violence, but of refusal. Refusing silence. Refusing obedience. Refusing to let tradition murder truth. What remains of Priyanka is more than the horror of her death. It is the courage of her no. And in that no, echoed by thousands who heard her story, we find our yes. Yes to justice. Yes to dignity. Yes to the belief that no one owns another. Not in marriage, not in culture, not in the name of honor. Her voice is gone, but her echo remains. And now, it's our turn to speak.